Good evening, Internet. This is your Rangers Journal podcast for Wednesday, August the 20th. It is, of course, the night after the night before, as Rangers went down to an incredibly disappointing 3-1 defeat to FC Club Brugge in the first round of the Champions League playoffs. Joining me to go through the game is, first of all, Dougie. Dougie, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Thanks. Yourself?
As good as can be. Colin, how are we doing, mate?
Hi, yeah, I'm good. Good, Ross. Yeah, tough one last night. So yeah, post-mortem the day after. We'll get into it.
We'll certainly get into it, and of course, fashionably late as always is Mitchell. Mitch, how are we doing?
Mate, I'm actually more on time than normal, but that's because we're behind.
Let's try and bring it forward by a minute or two for the next time. Folks, obviously, just first of all, before we get into the game, everybody here at the Rangers Journal and, of course, within the greater football community wishes to wish all the best to the family of Greenock Morton manager Doug Emery after the sad passing of his daughter Remy. Obviously, there's a bit of a fight with illness, and we would just like to wish, obviously, him and his family all the very best at this incredibly difficult time. And would like to just put a message out there as well to anybody that's listening. If you ever need support or help with any circumstances, please do not ever be afraid to speak up and seek the help that you need. There is no shame in it. There is no taboo about it, and it does not make you any less of a person. Anybody on here, I can only ever emphasize that enough, that you're available. The stuff is available for you. So please get out there and please go and speak to anybody for anything that you ever need. And that includes anybody that's on the pod tonight. So just want to obviously again send our best wishes out to the Emery family. Dougie, it's incredibly difficult to pass on from a sad situation like that, but we will try to talk about something a little bit more positive, if that's the case, which of course was Rangers last night. We played Club Brugge in the first leg of the Champions League playoff. It's down to a 3-1 defeat. Can I just ask you, first of all, for a quick summary of what you thought of the game?
Shambolic, I think is the word that comes to mind. I think the biggest word is disappointing. I said in the build-up on both pods and on the lowdown that I felt that we were a good enough team to get a result against Club Brugge, as difficult as it would be. But I did caveat that by saying that if we were not at our best, that they could easily get results against us. And that was exactly what transpired. We were far, not even. We weren't anywhere close to our best, and we weren't even close to being good for that first half. You're just really poor defensively, which at this level is going to cost you, and it did. In the first goal, it's unfortunately just another, as I say, complete shambles. Poor marking for the second, and the third one was a decent strike, but again, we could have closed it down a bit better. The third one was the one I was probably the least annoyed about. The other two, I think you can be just generally annoyed about. Second half, I've seen a lot of people saying don't fall into the trap of thinking the second half lets them off, and I think that's true. Another example of us waiting for the second half until we improved. You can make arguments as to, maybe Bruges took their foot off the pedal and were happy with being 3-0 up, and that allowed us to get in. Or you can say that we just did play better. I do think some of the players did step up a bit. So, but that just leaves you with the question is, well, why did they not step up in the first half? And was that more of individuals doing good than the team as a unit doing good? Which I think is an argument that can be made, because it's quite clear the players are struggling right now with the system that they're being asked to play.
I think so. Colin, it seems to be very, very apparent. We're now 8 games into the Russell Martin revolution, shall we call it that, to paraphrase. It's been difficult, and there's not been a lot to take from it. Last night seemed to be the highlights or the lowlights of Rangers probably over the last few years. The calamitous defending, the poor energy levels, the not tracking runners, and of course the obligatory screamer goal, which was the third one. What do we do? I mean, obviously we're going to break down the game a little bit more, but is it really as bad as it looks at the moment?
Afraid so, Ross. I think Doug's used the word I was going to use there. It was just an absolute shambles, absolutely shambolic. European nights at Ibrox, the crowd always bring the atmosphere, they always bring the noise. But last night it was like, I've been trying to think of what it's compared, compared it to something. It was almost like they turned up a concert expecting to hear some rock music, and it was a waltz that we saw or heard. I mean, it was just so slow, no rhythm, no intensity, no urgency. And I mean, even John Sudar wouldn't even be a good waltz partner. He's too slow for that. So, just grim to watch. And I think that the biggest issue for me, and I know we're going to get into it in detail, but it's one of two things or both. It's either these players are not capable of playing in the system, or they're not buying into it. And either way, or if it's both, then extremely concerning.
It is a concern. Mitchell, we played Club Brugge, maybe about, I don't know, was it maybe a month ago?
Roughly.
A month ago, we played them already in a game that obviously in the grand scheme of things doesn't count, but we were 2-0 down at half time, conceding a screamer of a goal. You can't say that there wasn't warning signs there, regardless of the circumstances. Obviously, the level of the game was different. It is, a game that we're trying to win to get into the Champions League. But, how many times are we going to make the same mistakes and learn that better teams are going to punish us? For the last, the first 8 games that we've played, we've all said the same thing. I think everybody, regardless of your opinions of Russell Martin, regardless of your opinions of anything, is that a better team is going to punish the way we're playing. And that was the case, wasn't it?
I think there's a few things that hindsight's a beautiful thing. But also, speaking of beautiful things, I want to say very well handled at the start, Ross. A great bit of dignity and very well started there at the beginning. We're going to try and keep this a bit lighter tonight, because we could all go around the doomsphere that was last night, I think. And it's gone, it's happened. There were some positives in the second half where certain players pulled their fingers back out, and certain players, in some instances, I think certain players last night played like they're not cut out to play at this level or for this club. And that's fine, because there's still weeks left of the window for that issue to be resolved. It wasn't great that Diamandi decided to drop the humdinger of all humdingers last night. Rothwell, basically assisted the centre-back for the third. He scored, and I will say, I'll not take anything away from the Bruges centre-back. Couldn't have hit a sweeter half volley in his life if he tried again. But the individual mistakes that we've seen from 18 months before spilled over again last night. And that is something that, and I'm trying not to go happy clapper here, because it's not really in my vocabulary, but it's something that we have been aware as a fan base has been a problem in the club for over 18 months now. Probably, let's go back 2-3 seasons. And I think it's an issue that we only seem to turn up when we've already had our drawers pulled down at that point, when the damage is done and there's nothing to fear. Instead of playing from the off, how we play when we're 2 goals down or 3 goals down, we seem to have this inability to shake ourselves off and kick ourselves up the backside to start a game. Even when you look at the game against Dundee, got ourselves a goal up. That should have been the basis to build. Let's get 2 up, let's get 3 up, and get the youngsters on. But instead, when we go the goal up, our team went pedestrian rather than having that killer instinct within the team. At no point after we lost the first goal did you see any player on that pitch take ownership of the situation, grab some of the younger players and say, right, it's happened, the brain fart has been, it is gone, grab the game by the scruff for the next 10 minutes, kill out the momentum that they've built for the next 10 minutes, and regroup. There didn't seem to be anything like that from anybody in the pitch. And I will say, rightly or wrongly, I've been a defender of John Souttar for a long time. The armband seems to weigh too heavy on him, in my opinion. He's not vocal enough. I'm not saying he's not aggressive enough, but he's not vocal enough and supportive enough of his teammate. If that had been, let's say, for somebody like Raskin, because we had the examples last season to compare apples with apples, Raskin would have been rollicking certain players on the pitch to say, we're a down one early, get your heads out your backsides, let's move the train forward. You never really heard much of that from Souttar last night.
No, he didn't. I think there's obviously been a lot of criticism labelled at the defence, quite rightly. But Dougie, there was obviously, Mitch Brooks brings up something there about conceding extremely quickly in the manner that we did. If you're going to concede a goal like that, surely, not to say it sounds a little bit kind of, trying to polish a turd here, but if you're going to concede a goal like that, that's the time to do it, isn't it? When you're 90 seconds into the game, you have the opportunity to completely reset and say, right, okay, we're starting a goal down, but we've still got 90 minutes to play to go and impose ourselves in the game. What is it about this team and this squad that just can't do it? They just don't have the ability or the wherewithal to do it until, essentially the game was out of our hands.
Yeah, I think. Let's start by saying anyone can lose a stupid goal at the very beginning of a game. That happens sometimes. The game's literally just started. You've not clicked in, and something stupid happens. That can happen. But unfortunately, we've got this knack of, and we've done this for a couple of seasons, losing 2 goals in quick succession. So that 1 goal in 3 became 2 goals in 7. And then obviously ultimately 3 goals in 20. And so I think if you kind of take the first 2, the first 2 are kind of, unfortunately, a classic failure of us right now. The third one, just came when it did. But we were having a big discussion, and I can't actually remember which of the chats it was in this afternoon, about the experience within the squad and how the balance of that shakes out, and comparing it to our friends across the way. And I do think that we have a vacuum of quality experience, because experience comes in different forms. Obviously, you can have experience just from length of playing. You're an older player, you've just played a lot of football, so you have experience in that way. And there's value in that. You'll come across loads of different situations and various other things. And then you've got experience in terms of winning trophies. You've got experience of playing in different leagues. You've got all these different types of experience that you can bring to the table. And that's why, I sometimes think we can't over-egg the captaincy, because your captain is, has one job, but then your leadership team, that's where you can stitch together all these different types of experience so that, different players can come in to help the team in different scenarios depending on the experience they've got. Now we've got, and forgive me if I get these numbers not going to be 100%, because I just quickly looked at them this afternoon, but we've got, I think, 2 players, maybe 3 players that are over 30. We've got then a couple that are bang on 30. And then we've got about 11 players that are in that kind of 26 to 30 range. And that, for me, that 26 to 30, and on obviously your older players, that's your kind of spot where you're going to likely have your players that have that best level of experience in terms of a mixture of length and quality. But when you look at the players that are in that, a lot of them are players that we either don't play or don't want to be here anymore. So, for example, one of the 26-year-olds is Cifuentes, who doesn't play and we'll be getting rid of. Davies doesn't play, we want rid of. Dowell does play, but we want rid of. A lot of these players that are in that sweet spot for me are players that, as I say, are not really a part of the team in the way that we need them to be. Whereas if you look across the way, that 26 to 30, that's where all of their key players are. Maida, Johnston, Hatate, and then their sort of elder statesmen are McGregor, Schmeichel. Their key players and players that you can see change in games from them are in that kind of area. Whereas I think our balance is started to tilt too far the other direction. So we've got all these great and interesting and exciting young players, but they don't necessarily have that experience. And so when you're talking about what Mitch was talking about there, in terms of like putting this, grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck or doing something to help the team progress forward, we're lacking in that. obviously our club captain is no longer a guaranteed starter anymore either. But Tavernier as a captain was always a lead by example type. He wasn't really a scruff of the neck, argue with others type as much. He was a guy that would go and try and do something, and that was why he often would save points for us and things like that. And I think when you do see us when he's on and we're down, he's trying to progress the ball forward and things like that. So that would be how he would try and do that. But he is getting older and less effective. And if you're a player who tries to lead by example, but your body can't show that example anymore, then obviously, that's going to struggle on the pitch as well. So, I think most of the work he does and that kind of stuff is off the field, but we really need some of it on the field. And so I think these next 2 weeks, or is it even 2 weeks now of the transfer window, we really need to find someone for me in that sweet spot who's got not just in terms of someone pointed out Robin Proper, he was an experienced player, but he didn't have he didn't really have a breadth of experience. All this experience was in one league for largely one team. So while he was an experienced player, he didn't really need to have that quality or that breadth. And I think that's what we need, at least one, ideally 2 or 3 players that have not just experience, can't get my fingers on screen here, but bunny ear quotes here, but quality and depth of experience to help us in times like that.
100%. Colin, obviously the point that Doug's making about the experience regarding the leadership group, if that's something that has obviously needed to be addressed, and Russell Martin has alluded to that in pressers, it's not been dealt with. And like you say, we've only got 2 weeks left of the transfer window, and we've been going into the Champions League qualifiers with a team of, if you want to use bunny quotes, inexperienced guys. We don't have leaders. The one guy who, admittedly, whether you like him or not, has been there to bail us out, even this season, has been the bit part player. The leadership group of the squad has been apparently Butland, Tavernier, John Souttar, Kieran Dowell. Even last year at one point, John Sterling get mentioned as a leader within the team. You're not going to win anything with a leadership group like that. But at the same time, I don't think you can be personally bringing in 6 or 4, even 3 or 4 leaders with 2 weeks left of the window, because I think you're just trying to flip square pegs into round holes. That needs to be the spine of the team. You need to build from the middle with your leaders. We were talking about it there, of guys within other teams. The older players are the spine of the team. The goalie, the centre half, the captain. You know what I mean? So are we basically fighting a losing battle already?
Well, I think you made the point there, Ross, about, Tav's been there, he's been captain, he's been criticised for many years. When we signed Rothwell, we were told he would be our leader. Obviously, the likes of Butler and Souttar have taken on more of a role this season. I mean, Doug touched on it there as well. There's different ways of showing leadership. Not every player has to be a leader, but there's different ways of showing leadership. I mean, I looked last night, and if we're trying to find the positives, and Mitch is trying to nudge us towards that, and I really admire that. So I'm going to do my best. If you're looking for the positives last night, that young left back that came in, 19, he's hardly played any senior games of football. To me, he showed leadership in the sense that he was willing to take the ball in the second half and make something happen. That is showing leadership. But I think what we're missing is, we are missing that kind of, I hate saying it, but that Callum McGregor who's shouting and bawling at players and encouraging them when things get tough. We saw last night, Souttar's captain. Souttar's one of the quietest players in the team, from what I gather and from what I've seen. Others might correct me on that, but from what I've seen attending games over the last couple of weeks, I'm watching on telly last night. He doesn't look like the kind of guy who's going to shout and bawl and encourage the guys around him and get them together and say, yeah, look, we've lost a daft goal early on there, but it was just a lack of communication. So I think the first goal, again, it's been touched on already, that wasn't necessarily down to the tactics, it was just miscommunication. But then you cannot react the way we reacted. And I think it's absolutely down to the lack of leadership, Ross, like you mentioned there. If you have a spine of a team, that's when it comes to the forefront, when things are tough. And we've seen it countless times. Mitch mentioned it there. The same issues reappearing in this team that we've seen year upon year since we won 55. So You're right, Ross. I can't see us getting 4 or 5 leaders in over the next 10 days, I think it is, that's left in the window. But my goodness, we need 2 or 3.
I think we need a hell of a lot more than that, to be brutally honest with you. But I suppose that's perhaps something that we'll obviously talk about maybe a little bit later in the week. Or there's the transfer window has obviously been a little bit more stagnant over the last few days. I think that the lack of outgoings has really hindered us in that aspect. Mitch, I did see that you asked somebody to expand on a comment, and I'm going to just bring it up to you. It came from Brian. Obviously, thanks so much, Brian, for your question. We will have a wee dig at it. And I will bring it to you, Mitch, because you did ask him to expand on it. He's obviously asking about the style of play and whether there is one or not the perceived style of play. My apologies. I suppose I'll leave the floor to you. How do you interpret what Russell Martin's style of play should be like?
There's an element that you can see the vision, and I'm not going to lie, you have to wipe all the muck off your specs and really look quite hard. But it is meant to be high intensity, high attacking, fast paced, athletic football, built from the back and built from a base of possession. The problem is we've bought athletic players, we've bought quick players. The problem is that for some reason, the minute they step foot onto the pitch for the sound of the first whistle, they play like it's the over 40s walking league football that you see up the East End. And let's be honest, it's not a high caliber striker up there, but it's not. The players aren't following the instruction, I don't think, the way that the instruction is meant to be intended. However, that's also to a certain degree on the manager to then say, we can't go from point A where we were when I first came in to point B on one big jump and movement. Maybe we need to let's go from point A and can we get to A.5? I probably should have used numbers for this. But can we get to 1.5 instead of 2? Can we get, what's the smaller steps to get there rather than the huge leap? And I understand that we've had pre-season, we've had all the rest of it, but some of our senior players are, still recovering from fitness, coming back, who've came back late, etc., had knocks during pre-season, all the rest of it. The weird thing with, and I'm going to touch on what Colin had mentioned there. I know I'm going to touch on Colin, but I'm not getting HR phoned. But I think Colin touched it really well with Makoma last night. He played like a player who had no inhibition and no weight of the world on his shoulder. Clearly somebody, maybe it's the manager, maybe it's somebody else in the changing room, spoke to him at half-time and went, what happened in the first half isn't on you. You keep doing what you're doing. Bomb the head down, keep running and keep moving. And actually, the catalysts for the better second half performance, where we played quicker, played with athleticism, played out of possession, there will be an element that we have to allow that Bruges would have took the foot off the pedal, been 3-0 up. You can't blame them. Early doors, been 3 goals up to the good in a Champions League qualifier early in the season. Legs are going to be hurting at that point because they've played quite a bit of football as well. But the players that kicked off the better performance in the second half, there's no coincidence that that's younger athletic players without inhibition that were brought in. When you look at it, it was Makoma, it was Gassama, it was Raskin grew into the second half after he clearly gave himself a kick between the legs to wake up. Diamandi was rightfully hooked. Personally, you could argue that him and Rothwell could have quite easily been hooked at half-time. But fair play to the manager, he gave them an opportunity to go out there and, fix the mistakes of the first half. They didn't. That is what it is. But there was an element there that everything good that we've seen in the second half was built from the base of young players not inhibited by the previous scars of yesterday. And I think, in a really weird way, if you watch that game as the second half and you watched it as if it was 0-0, you would have thought that was a young, athletic, aggressive team that play the ball really well, play it quickly, and they will make you work like a dog for everything that you earn. The problem was the 45 minutes that came before that, where the individual mistakes that came in, and there is an element that the manager cannot do everything. He cannot physically be on the pitch anymore. You know, he's an old man now by footballing terms. You know, don't worry, I'm not putting any of us out to pasture yet, but he can't put the boots on and go and play in the back line himself anymore. When you are a manager, you are trusting the 11 players that you have chose to go and represent the club. You're trusting them to go and do their job for the full 90 minutes. But it seems to be that even under Clement and even under Barry, even currently under Russell Martin, as a team we still can't string 90 minutes of good football together, let alone stringing 2 or 3 good, consistent performances together. And somewhere along the line, the players have to take that on the chin themselves. So I think I've answered the question in the really long way there.
Of course, the most long-winded way that only you can deliver, and that's
Doug.
top quality. However, the one thing I have to disagree with you there is I can't believe you're even advocating Russell Martin getting involved in the Rangers defence again. I watched it once, I went through that once, and I don't want to have it anywhere ever again. Doug, just before we'll go on to kind of a bit of more of the breakdown of the game, but I wanted to just pick on something that Mitch brought up there that it's been mentioned that, you know, the players can't string 3 or 4 decent passes together when they're under pressure, never mind 90 minutes together. Is that an issue with the coaching? It's obviously a statement here by RFC72. We always love when he contributes. He's always a regular contributor. There has been a query about, you know, the guys have come in and looked good before they've had the opportunity to be coached. We talk about Oliver Antman against Pilsen, looked excellent. We looked like we'd won an absolute gem, and then since then he's not really had the opportunity to be, you know, what we thought we were getting. You then brought up Makoma last night. You know, once he kind of understood that he was what he was supposed to do, he looked the part. He looked quite positive. He looked like he was wanting to do something. But you know, there is that fear that once he gets on the training field, it's going to resort back. Is that just perhaps a little bit of an overreaction towards the coaching, or do you think there is a serious issue with, you know, the coaching?
Well, first on Antman, I think that's a little bit of an overreaction personally. He played well, obviously, when he came in against Pleasant. He also played well against Dundee. He created more chances than anyone else in the match that day. He didn't play against Alloa. So we're talking about like one game that he's been worse in than the other 2 games. So he's played more good games than he's played bad. So I think that personally for me, that's a bit of an overreaction. That being said, I do think, as I said before, it seems clear to me that the players, you know, are struggling to implement whatever the system that they're being asked to do. If you look at that first goal, there's two aspects to it. So you've got Jigga and you've got Butland, 2 of the sort of the primary issues with involved that. Now for me, it's 80% on Jigga, because he's the one with the man and he's the one that completely stops and lets that man run right past him. Now, there is a bit of it on Butland, because Butland was coming out and then hesitates and stops. So to me, when you're looking at the Martin system, obviously we've talked at length about the goalkeeper and being able to use his feet and be a bit of a sweeper keeper in that kind of modern goalkeeping way. And that's something that Butland is not necessarily ever done or is comfortable with. And I think that you see that in that moment of hesitation where he's not 100% sure of what he wants to do. But, you know, Jigga is facing Butland, so he should see that. And again, you know, he shouldn't be letting his man go. And even if Butland had come out and to clear the ball and hadn't hesitated, Jigga should still be busting a gut to keep with his man, because for all he knows, Butland trips on a lace and falls over when he's running out to the ball. You know, it's not that long ago that's the kind of mistake Butland would have made. So to me, either way, you know, Jigga's got to be chasing that. But I mean, the main point I'm making is, as I say, that to me, the Butland part of it is one of those signs. I think we've seen with the fullbacks, there's not necessarily, for me anyway, been 100% solid in terms of what they're doing. They seem to invert really, really frequently and deeply to begin with in our first couple of games, and then the friendlies. And we had the midfielders pushing right out wide. They've not done quite as much of that recently, so I don't know, has that been a tweak to the system, or again, is that them not doing something? There's some issues with the press we saw as well, where we seem to see our wingers going into the centre backs rather than maybe going out to the fullbacks. And is that leaving too much space in terms of what's the striker meant to be doing in the press and that? So I think there's little things that we're seeing that just show that, you know, there's issues there. Now, again, you know, if we're looking at it from that point of view, then you can say, well, we're only 8 games in with a brand new team as well, because not only is this a new manager trying to implement a new system, but you know, half of the team are getting used to one another as a team as well as taking on this new system. So I do think from that point of view, it's understandable that it's not coming together as quickly as we'd like. The problem that Marcel Martin has is that people were not on board with him to begin with as a manager, so he's getting absolutely zero leeway. And he also needs to be finding a way to win in spite of these issues, because that's what we demand. And he's not doing that. And so these issues are compounding to cause most people to just be looking at this going, well, I didn't want this guy. And I can't see the shoots of anything green. So this is just a disaster. Whereas if he'd beaten Motherwell, if he'd beaten Dundee, we'd be sitting there going, the team's not working, but at least but we're still getting results. He'd get that bit of leeway that he needs. But what Mark Martin is going to really need to understand, because it's really early doors, and I'm already getting those Clemonti vibes. I put a tweet up today about, you know, Clement early doors said, "Oh, you'll see the real Rangers in October," and I started to wonder, is Russell Martin going, "Oh, you know, we'll have pain, but it'll be great when it clicks"? Is that going to be his? We'll see the best Rangers in October. And at first I'd put, at least he didn't give himself a deadline. But then actually when I looked at it again, he had actually given himself a deadline, because he said, judge us in May when we're hopefully playing great and winning stuff. He'll be lucky if he gets to May if things continue this way, because the pressure will build and build unless he gets results, because that's ultimately the key point. Someone said in the chat, will the league be over if he loses, if he drops points against St Mirren and Celtic? No, because Celtic dropped 20 odd points last season, so the league won't be over. We'll still be early days, but his job might be over.
I think he says that he wants to be, like you say, he wants to be judged in May. I think he'll be getting judged for the job centre if he keeps going the way that he's going at the moment. Obviously, one of the things that has been really, really concerning about Russell Martin, and on top of everything, has been, you know, we spoke about the first goal there and the lack of leadership and the lack of responsibility the players are willing to take. But something that comes from the second goal is the abysmal set pieces that have been, to be fair, have tarnished Russell Martin as a manager long before he arrived at Ibrox. I was just got something that's been brought up here by Dougie. It's talking about, it's a little bit more highlighted towards the defensive setup when it comes to set pieces. Colin, the second, obviously this isn't the clip of the second goal, but it does strike, you know, it's a enhanced image of a serious concern regarding how we defend set pieces. The second goal comes from basically the point blank refusal to mark men. We decide to have a little bit of a choice between, you know, 4 guys standing across the 6-yard box, zonally marking, and then 3 or 4 guys picking up players whilst leaving, you know, 4 or 5 Bruges players with nobody at all. Do you know what I mean? If you don't mark guys, you know, you can't. You're going to give them opportunities, and teams like that are going to punish you, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I think about this in the group chat last night. Nobody has ever seen a space score a goal. So this obsession with marking space instead of marking men is just baffling to me. And even more so when you consider that Russell Martin was a centre-half who, presumably, not so much a Rangers, but he forged himself a half-decent career. And he was seen as a leader himself. So it's baffling to me that we're seeing so many chances given away from set pieces. And we're not just talking about, you know, that image is a free kick, obviously, you know, from an awkward angle, but you know, we've seen it from corners, even from throw-ins. I mean, every single dead ball it's been shocking. The one last night, I mean, again, zonal marking across the 6-yard box, but it wasn't just that. We had nobody on the edge of the box. They had 3 players on the edge of the box. So even if we do make contact with the first ball, we're not getting anywhere. They have got us pinned in, and they are going to get a second ball, possibly in a third ball back in, if required, back into the box. Doug and I did the Middlesbrough game in pre-season, the post-match, and we went through the 2 goals we lost against Middlesbrough, both from set pieces. And Doug asked the question that day about whether this was a worrying pattern. And I think I said, it's too early. It's now become serious, like absolutely chronic. I mean, we've lost 2 goals to Middlesbrough in pre-season. You can write off pre-season goals if you want. But we'll go to the start of the season. So Dundee at Ibrox had hit the post twice, I think, before they eventually scored from one. They had a couple other chances. We lost an absolutely shocking goal against Alloa last week from a set piece, and again last night. And I think I'm probably missing another one. But set pieces are such a massive part of modern day football. You can pass the ball to death. And by the way, we haven't got on to that side of the game. But sticking to the set pieces, it's diabolical. Just give every single man a job, put them up against an opposition player, and that way you match up your tall. Just absolute basics. You get your tallest players on their biggest players. I mean, in that graphic, I can't remember exactly who it was, Ross. Your eyes might be better than mine, but I think it was someone like Jeffrey got caught at the back post, marking their tallest centre-half. Just absolute basics. Now, Russell Martin said in the post-match last night, and I wrote an article for the Journal website a few weeks ago about the importance of handling the media properly, because we've seen it for years. Rangers managers are under pressure in terms of media, as well as how we perform on the pitch. You are under constant scrutiny. And we've all seen, Caixinha was a joke. Clement gave himself an unrealistic timeline where he said we could see the real Rangers. Doug mentioned Russell Martin's already fallen into traps. I mean, last night he said we won't concede 2 goals like that again. Well, I'm sorry, but on the basis of what we've seen over the last few weeks, we're going to give up. If I'm Stephen Robinson, I'm licking my chops at the prospect of corners and free kicks on Sunday against us when we go and play St Mirren. So yeah, it's just there's so much to work on. But set pieces, diabolical.
There was. I don't know if you've seen the Willie Vass photos of the director's box. Stephen Robinson did have a big grin on his face. If you get a chance to go and look at them, he will be licking his lips at the thought of playing us. Just a wee shout out to Chaz for the £5 donation. Thank you so much. We always, of course, support. Appreciate your support. He's gifted the Journal membership as well. Please, thank you so much. If you do like what you see, please do contribute. Everything goes towards the production of the show, which does not cost you a penny. This is totally voluntary, and we always really appreciate it. Something that is obviously brought up there, Mitch, is that the style of football, or non-existent style of football, is a serious concern, and we're far too passive, and we're far too vulnerable, to be honest with you. And then when it comes,
there's something, sorry, like it's been bothering me for like a good couple of minutes there, and it's not something Colin said, but it is something that Colin said, but something that follows on to what Colin said. Sorry, Colin, you're not on the firing line there. I've put all the petrol bombs away for the now. Doesn't reach as far as Thornaway. But it's very weird when you're talking about the positional play, set pieces. It's not just the positional play of starting defending. When you look at that third goal where Rothwell with the header that he put out, one, the worst header you've ever seen in your life, but two, even down at under sevens football, you're taught if you're going to head the ball, head it to space away from goal. All he done was he literally headed the ball forward into a crowded area full of Bruges players. By proxy, one of their players were picking that up and getting a shot on goal. That's not something that can be necessarily coached. That's something that's sheer stupidity from players at times. But there is an element here where zonal marking and things like that, it's all very late 90s, early 2000s, FIFA football, call it. But when players won't even defend the basics, like putting that header. If he turns his head even to the left and aims for the byline, the result may have been the same in terms of them scoring, or you at least give the rest of your defence half a second to get themselves back together again and go, right, reset the lines, someone go and break it. So someone like Raskin, go and mark the man out there, or Makoma, go out to the byline. You're the quickest player, go against whoever that is that's went to the byline to retrieve it for them. It kind of boils back down to that individual mistakes and stupidity. And it does, and I don't want to feel like I'm calling our players thick, but there is that element where some of the players do need a toe right up the backside. And sorry, Colin, on you go, mate.
No, it's just you made a great point there about Rothro's header, because I look back at that goal a couple of times, and yeah, it's a great finish and stuff, but the ball came to him. He could have taken that down the chest and volleyed it away. And I was just going to ask you, sorry, I'm taking Rothro's role here. I just want to ask, do you think that the fact that he's heading that, and I think he is trying to find Danilo, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, we'll say he is, but it's almost like Russell Martin has got them, it's so ingrained in them that we're supposed to try and keep possession at all times. Is he trying to gnaw down to Danilo and keep possession of the ball rather than just clearing the ball?
Do you know, I'll be honest, I think some of this comes down to this modern football management where football's a relatively simple game, but you break it down. Either keep ball out net or put ball in net. That's what it boils down to, really, when you compartmentalise it. And I think this tippy-tappy, ultra possession-based game and defenders having the most amount of touches, one, it kills the enjoyment out of the game as an overall, just even away from Rangers. Like, you watch a Premier League game, or you watch, a good German game or whatever. This kind of stick up the backside some managers have got of, well, if we've got the ball, the other team can't score. You're like, okay, but from a viewer's perspective and from a punter's perspective, I don't really want my centre-backs to be having 300 touches over the course of a game. What I want to see is them, by all means, have 50 touches over the game, and of that, I want to see 20 of them being defending-related, touches that they're having. And then the rest of it can be they're tapping the ball around or whatever to help their teammates find space. And I think this is part of the problem with Russell Martin's style of football. And you've seen it last year with even Man City, who have the ultimate master in this type of football. Man City get found out real quick because all other teams simply do is they go, the more you pass this ball around between yourselves, someone by proxy is going to make a mistake and not hit a pass the right way, or the ball's going to take a shimmy off somebody's foot the wrong way. If I put 2 runners or 3 runners on your 2 centre-backs, when one of them undoubtedly makes a mistake, or when the keeper doesn't clear his lines, or when something goes, there's a malfunction at the junction somewhere, you're literally put the whole team and the whole defence are taken out by one simple movement of winning the ball and then having a straight 3-on-none pretty much at that point. And I just don't think football needs to be as complicated as Russell Martin's making it.
Yes, I think that you made a really good comparison there towards Pep, and I'm not trying to say that he is the same as Pep, but I think they probably get the same philosophy and the same idea on how they want to play football, is keep the ball for possession's sake. And I did listen to something along, I can't remember where I heard it, so please forgive me where it came from, I can't remember. It was talking about the Pep comparison, where to the point where it's good when you're winning, but it can be incredibly boring. And bearing in mind that that's a team that spent, basically a state's GDP to get that style of football. They've essentially spent, a country's money to be able to pass the ball around the back, and then, even then that couldn't get them the Champions League. They basically had to go and buy the big man up front to win them the Champions League. Do you know what I mean? So we don't have the guys, we don't have the ability to play it, especially when we've got guys at the back that we've been speaking about who don't take command of the ball, they don't take control, and they've got certainly more than one brain fart in them. So it's incredibly disappointing, and it's like you say, I think we know it's only going to go one way, but kind of last thing we wanted to bring up. I know we've kind of been a bit kind of negative, but unfortunately, it's just the way the world at the moment. But we have to do it. One thing you brought up, Mitch, I wanted to bring Doug back in on about it, was the attacking options. We were talking about Rothwell trying to find Danilo and keep the ball. The problem when you find Danilo to keep the ball is that Danilo gives the ball away constantly. His hold-up play is not good enough. And obviously, you have made a slide talking about our frontline options. Cyril Dessers has obviously been the kind of main man so far for Rangers over the last 2 seasons, but Danilo has been the guy that's played this season, perhaps more due to availability rather than ability. Let's be honest, the 2 guys that are going to be here aren't good enough, and the one that we all want is, I think his head's probably been turned. So, can you make an easy justification that of the, we're talking about bringing in 3 or 4 signings, 2 of them have probably got to be centre forwards, don't they?
That to me, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's will be interesting to see how things pan out. I mean, obviously you've got Dessers there who he's had this on-off saga with AEK. Apparently they're still interested, but they have brought in another striker, so they're maybe not as much in need as they were to begin with. We've obviously got valuation for him that we want. I don't see Danilo going anywhere because I just don't think there'll be the market for him. Because he's been injured and obviously not playing. If anything, some people have talked up the idea of putting Finlay Curtis on loan. I'd put Danilo on loan and keep Finlay Curtis in the squad because Finlay Curtis is coming on and scoring goals and looks like a goal scorer. So if anything, I'd potentially try and find somewhere we could pop Danilo out on loan and maybe let him work out his issues somewhere else. And maybe maybe with a little less pressure and stuff like that would be good for him. And then you've got Egerman who has the potential to be our best striker. I think you can. There's still a toss up of a coin between Dessers and Egerman because Dessers still scores more goals more frequently, but Egerman has the potential to overtake him. And Egerman has better all round play. In a lot of different ways, and I think he fits the system better. However, he's one way I do compare him to Morelos. I don't think he's a similar player to Morelos in a lot of ways, but one way that he is that he likes to drift and drop to the wide areas and things like that. And I have seen when in games that we have him, we do sometimes have that issue again that we used to have under Morelos, where there's no one left in the middle, and you need your advancing midfielders. And again, we're having trouble with our midfielders making late runs and getting into the box and supporting attacks. So I do think there's issues there, and getting another striker in that's purchased specifically for the system to fit exactly what Russell Martin's wanting to fit in with the players around him could make a really big difference. It's not going to change everything, but it could make a huge difference. I mean, you can see things like Danilo here is by far the most successful player dribbling with the ball between the 3 of them, but he doesn't do it as often as Egerman does. He does it more than Dessers, but he doesn't do it as much as Egerman. So you get a trade-off there as to, okay, well, he's good at dribbling, but he's not doing it as frequently, so he's not having as big of an impact than maybe Egerman is, whose dribbling isn't quite successful, but he makes more attempts, so he's maybe getting the ball forward more often anyway. I do think you see that with Egerman. Sometimes he kind of just tanks his way through, or he kind of bursts his way, loses the ball, but someone else can pick it up. And Sakala used to do that quite a bit as well. He would just be herring away, and he might lose the ball, but someone else who's supporting him will pick it up, and you still get an attack out of it. Things like that we're missing. If I could quickly bring up the other side I've got here. This, I don't know if this is maybe a bit difficult to read. I might.
How good do you think my eyes are, Doug?
I know. I didn't have enough time,
like
unfortunately.
Stevie Wonder trying to look out to a crowd.
I don't know if that's any better. Probably not. But I'll quickly go through what it says, basically, because I think this is the data that really backs up what we're seeing with our eyes. So people are always talking about data and eye test, the data versus the eye test, and I feel right now these things are marrying up completely. What this is, don't really worry too much about the numbers, but what I've looked at here is our season so far numbers looked at comparing that against last season, and then comparing it against the season we won the league and the following year, where we obviously got to a Europa League final, so i.e. our successful 2 years. And a lot of the key metrics you're looking at, and the year we won the league, we were scoring 2.44 goals per 90, and right now we've plummeted down to 1.78, so we're not scoring as much. Passing, surprise, surprise, passing is up. 490 passes per 90, up to 604 under Martin. So no surprise there. We're all expecting that. So that's my immediate thought with that, though, is, okay, so what are we doing with those passes, though? And when you look at the actual passes themselves, we've gone from under Gerrard, we would make roughly 86 passes, back passes per 90. Under Clement, we only made 71 back passes per 90. He tended to shoot long balls and move the play up quite quickly. We're now making 96, over 96 back passes per 90. So we're passing the ball backwards, so that's no good. We're pretty much as is in terms of when we were successful in terms of lateral passes. So we're still moving the ball across the pitch from side to side. That's fine, that's good. We want to do that to move defences around, so that part's okay. Long passes, and all of those other years I've looked at, we were sitting in the mid to high 40s per 90 for long passes. We're now only making 27.33 long passes per 90. So we've totally abandoned long balls pretty much. So if you think about, like, for example, the classic Tavernier ball from deep that created goals like against Man United and Tottenham, we're not doing that type of thing at all anymore. We're not making long passes like that. And progressive passes, we were making sort of just above 80 in all three of those other seasons I've looked at. We're now only making 69 progressive passes per 90. We're not progressing the ball forward. So the data is really backing up the fact that we're passing it just around the defence, and we're not getting the ball forward. We're not attacking with it, and thusly we're scoring less goals. We're making less counter-attacks. Under Gerrard, we made 2.61 counter-attacks per 90. We're now making 0.89. And you can tie that up with winning duels. We won 208 duels per 90 under Gerrard. We're now doing 178. So we're not winning duels, turning over the ball and counter-attacking to score goals. So to me, without having to read any of that data is just really nailing on the head that it is really passing for passing's sake right now. It is exactly what we've been worried, what a lot of people were worried about, just knocking the ball about. We're not actually getting any penetration. We're not moving the ball forward. We're just moving it from side to side and back to defense and then back up again and sides. And that is going to have to change, or we're going to continue to not score goals. And then if we continue to make mistakes in defense like we've been doing, then we'll not score goals, we'll concede goals, and then we'll end up drawing a bunch of games because we are still technically better than a lot of the teams we'll face, but we'll draw games, we'll not win them, and then against the better teams we'll lose them and not win them.
Well, thanks for that long-winded example of what the eye test has been telling us, that we don't get the ball forward enough, Doug. Thanks for that. Thanks for killing 15 minutes of our time. And if you're not went to sleep yet, Colin, we've obviously been talking about it in the serious concerns regarding the way that the team goes forward or doesn't go forward. It's one of those things that the manager, we're obviously just going to kind of start to wrap it up, but the manager's obviously continuously wanting to emphasise the idea that there's going to be, it's the phrase that he's been using, and we have mentioned it, this is his buzzword, is that there's going to be pain before it clicks. But how much of this pain can we go through before you perhaps realise that it's maybe not going to get better? Because teams have no fear. There is not a fear of anybody coming to Ibrox to play Rangers. Like we were talking about, St Mirren will be licking the lips because we just don't have the ability to run, to track, to tackle, and we just make these teams look good, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And the striking options we had up on the screen there, I feel really sorry for our strikers. Probably the only position in the team that currently the guys in this team that I actually feel sorry for, because it's almost impossible to judge them. I mean, we do judge them on misplaced passes or bad touches or whatever, but they're not getting involved in the game. You could stick Haaland, Lewandowski, Yamal. It doesn't matter who you stuck up there for us right now. They're barely touching the ball. I mean, as Doug's gone over there with the stats, that spells it out. That backs up what the eyes are seeing. We've got John Sood and Giga passing the ball back and forth, almost 100 times a game. We're going backwards. We're not getting our wingers involved in the game. It's grim to watch, and I get the fact that he's saying there's going to be pain before we see the results. But I think I'm probably in the majority of fans here where we're just not sure if the result of this system working to the level that he thinks it might work is actually going to be successful. And it goes back to the whole culture and vision of a club. I mean, they are clearly trying to change what Rangers Football Club looks like on the pitch. There's also been change in ownership. There's been change in management. There's been a change in the players. But sometimes, supporters turning up at Ibrox do not want to see slow football. I mean, I think the best examples you can look at in world football are you'd never see Barcelona play 4-4-2 with two big men up front. And on the flip side of that, you'd never see Everton, for example, go for a tippy-tappy manager because their fans just don't like that kind of stuff. It's up and at them in their faces. And certainly in the early signs, I think the only 45 minutes that I can look at where we saw glimpses, and it was just 45 minutes out of how many games now, was the 45 minutes against Pilsen. I mean, it did look good in spells, but that's nowhere near enough. And, you look at the midfield options. Our midfield, I think we've lost the midfield battle in every single game we've played so far, possibly apart from the Pilsen game at home. Our three midfielders, no matter who they are, but you can call out Diomande, you can call out Raskin, you can call out Rothwell, you can call out any of the individuals, but the system has all three of our midfielders playing in different postcodes. It's bonkers. And if Sood or Gia make one pass that they misplace, we're wide open. It's complete and utter madness. And I can't remember which one of you mentioned there. I think it was you, Ross, about Man City and the amount of money they've spent on players to fit that system. Technically gifted players at the top level of world football. We don't have it. We cannot continue to play it this way. And I think the biggest issue for us, and more so for Russell Martin, is we know from Southampton fans, MK Dons fans, Swansea fans, he is not going to change. I think the only suggestion that he had given from the lessons he learned from the Premier League was when he mentioned the fact that they lacked physicality. But that was the only thing. So he's not going to change his philosophy. He's not going to change what the players have been asked to do. And, we talk about fans buying in. I mean, clearly, after 20 minutes last night, the number of fans leaving Ibrox, personally, I don't blame any one of them. We don't want to see it. But as well as getting the fans to buy in, first and foremost, you have to get the players to buy in. And throughout pre-season, he spoke quite a lot about the fact that they were doing everything they asked, that the coaching staff were asking. They were buying in. I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing it. And I'm trying with every bit of me to find the positives. But I'm not seeing the likes of Raskin buying in. I'm not seeing the likes of, some of the new guys, even some of the new guys coming in. They just, who have played with him before and who have played in similar systems, they don't look like they believe in it. And so if they don't believe in it, how on earth can Rangers fans get behind it? Now, Sunday against St Mirren, I think, is probably one of the worst. I mean, it didn't matter who we're going to play. It'll be a tough game the way we're operating at the moment. But St Mirren away, tight pitch, they're going to love it. And I really fear for us. So I hope he adapts in certain ways, especially with the midfield. Get the three tight and just give ourselves a chance to get into games and control games, because we're not doing it. And that was a rant. I'm sorry, Ross.
No, it's a ranty pod. I think we're all kind of struggling to really see the positives. I could not sum that up better myself. Mitchell, I will give you the final word. Colin says there that Russell Martin will not change his style. It only goes one way then, doesn't it?
I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to throw a side swerve, just a touch. I think I'm going to finish the pod on positivity from last night, and there's not a huge amount of it floating about there. You give me that thumbs down and you're bottom of that, Ross. And you'll be bottom of the bolts. But I think what we need to look at is, one, if we were all honest with ourselves, the Champions League was probably one step too far for the current squad as it is right now. the first mission was accomplished, which was make sure we get the Europa. We've done that. Is the Bruges game completely dead? Perhaps not, but that really depends on us pulling a rabbit, not even just out the hat, but out the metaphorical hoo-ha next week. It's all right, I kept it PG, Ross, don't panic. But I think as well, there are green shoots in this team of players like Michoma, there are Gassama in the team, there is Ant-Man, there is creativity in the team that just needs to click a little bit. Things need to sharpen up in the players around them. You know, if we can get the slack space cut down and the brain farts cut down, there is the makings of a team that could do something quite special as a team, rather than playing as a team that might be a bit special right now. You know, so I think there's some green shoots there, and I mean, I'm clutching here, but I don't want us to end on a sour note of it was all doom and gloom and, you know, it was raining blood for the sky or anything like that. Like, there are bits there, and there are some bits there for holding out hope for the weekend. And if we can get if the manager can get us on a run of games, and that starts with the weekend, where get St Mirren in the bag, pull off the unthinkable next week, and then, you know, go and put Celtic to the sword as well. That's quickly, and we're all fickle because we are football fans. It's what we are. You win those 3 games, the ship suddenly turns the other way in terms of opinion, and it's not that hard to win us over as fans by keep ball out net, put ball in net. That's all we need to do.
Very simple, but you know, we don't do simple with Rangers. We always seem to take things the more complicated route. Obviously, I just wanted to end on that. It's been a long pod. Thank you so much to everybody for sticking with us. We know it's been a little bit of a hard one. If you do like what you see, please do not hesitate to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. It is absolutely free, and you will not get any more in-depth coverage of Rangers for not a single penny anywhere on the internet. It's all done by the guys for nothing. Obviously, Dougie, who's on tonight, he puts on so much effort into all the slides that you see. I want to just obviously say thanks so much, first of all, to Doug for his work and for joining us tonight. Thanks, Dougie.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone in the chat. And I want to live in the multiverse that Mitch is living in.
Thanks so much to Colin.
Thanks, Ross.
When we get that wonderful accent.
Yeah.
And from the land of happy clapping delusion, Mitchell, go back into your hole of happiness in Cyril Desser's posters. Have fun.
It's all right, mate. They're on the walls as it is, but absolute pleasure as always, boys.
It has been fun. Thank you so much to everybody again for joining. And remember that every night is your Rangers Journal night, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Good night.